"I slept in your bed, rancher. Get ready. We're going to have a child," said the Apache fugitive. The land was wide and quiet, stretching far beyond where the eye could see. Dry grass moved gently with the evening wind, and the sky slowly turned orange as the sun sank behind distant hills. The ranch stood alone in that open space, a simple wooden house with a barn nearby. Life here was hard, lonely, and honest. Every day followed the same pattern, and the man who owned the ranch liked it that way. The rancher was a man of few words. People in nearby towns knew him as someone who kept to himself. He woke before sunrise, worked until his body ached, and slept as soon as night came. He had learned long ago not to expect kindness from life. Years earlier, sickness had taken his wife, and not long after, their child was lost too. Since then, silence had become his companion. The ranch was not just his home, it was the only place where he felt he still belonged. That evening, the wind carried something unusual. The horses in the corral became restless, their ears turning toward the far edge of the land. The rancher noticed it while fixing a broken fence. He paused, listening carefully. At first, there was nothing but wind. Then faintly, he heard a sound that did not belong to the land, heavy breathing, uneven and weak. He reached for his rifle, not out of anger but habit. Out here, danger could come quietly. He followed the sound toward a cluster of rocks near a dry creek. As he came closer, he saw movement. A figure collapsed near the stones, barely able to sit upright. It was a woman. She looked exhausted, her clothes torn and dusty. Dark hair fell loose around her face, and her skin was marked with dirt and dried blood from a wound on her side. Her eyes lifted toward him, sharp with fear and defiance at the same time. She tried to stand but failed, falling back with a quiet sound of pain. The rancher froze. This was not his problem. Helping strangers often led to trouble, especially out here. Everyone knew stories of fugitives, of people being hunted by the law or by others seeking revenge. His first instinct was to turn away and leave her to whatever fate had brought her there. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she pressed her hand against her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Or maybe it was the look in her eyes, not begging, not weak, but determined to survive. He lowered the rifle slowly. "Don't come closer," she said, her voice low but steady. "I wasn't planning to," he replied. They stared at each other for a long moment. The wind moved between them, carrying dust and tension. Finally, the rancher spoke again. "You're hurt," he said. She nodded once. "I don't need your help." He almost laughed at that, but he didn't. He had seen pride before, he understood it well. "If I leave you here, you won't make it through the night," he said plainly. Her jaw tightened. "That's my problem." He stood there, torn between sense and something deeper. Helping her could bring the law to his door. It could cost him his land, maybe even his life. But leaving her would mean certain death. He thought of his empty house, of the long nights spent listening to nothing at all. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Not far." "That'll have to do." He offered his arm. She hesitated, then took it. Her weight was heavier than he expected, not because she was large, but because she was weak. Step by step, they moved toward the house. She winced but did not complain. Inside, the house smelled of wood, leather, and dust. It was clean but bare, with only the things he truly needed. He helped her onto the bed near the fireplace and lit a lamp. The soft light revealed how serious her injury was. The wound had been poorly treated, and infection had already begun. He fetched water, cloth, and herbs he kept for emergencies. Without speaking much, he cleaned the wound carefully. She watched him closely, ready to react if he did anything wrong. His hands were firm but gentle, practiced from years of treating animals and his own injuries. "Who's after you?" he asked quietly. She looked away. "Everyone." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." He accepted that. Pressing further would only push her away. When he finished tending the wound, he stepped back. "You can stay tonight," he said. "At first light, you'll have to decide what you're doing." She nodded, already too tired to argue. As night deepened, rain began to fall outside, tapping softly against the roof. The storm grew stronger and thunder rolled across the land. The rancher slept in a chair near the door, rifle within reach. In the middle of the night, he woke to a quiet sound. She was shaking, her body weak with fever. He moved closer and placed another blanket over her. Without thinking, he carried her to his own bed, closer to the warmth of the fire. It was not a moment of desire, only necessity. The storm raged outside, and the world beyond the walls felt far away. She slept there, breathing slowly, while he stayed awake beside the bed, watching the fire burn low. When morning came, the rain had washed the land clean. Sunlight entered through the window, touching the wooden floor. The woman woke slowly, confused at first, then alert. She realized where she was and stiffened. "You put me here," she said. "You were freezing," he answered. "That's all." She studied his face, searching for something that wasn't there. Finally, she relaxed slightly. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He had no good answer. "Because I did." She sat up carefully. "You know what people say about me. I don't listen much to what people say. They call me a criminal, a killer. Are you?" "No," that was all she said. He didn't press further. Some truths came in their own time. For the next few days, she stayed at the ranch. Her strength returned slowly. She helped where she could, feeding chickens, mending clothes, keeping herself useful. They spoke little, but silence between them no longer felt sharp. At night, they sat near the fire, each lost in their own thoughts. Danger remained close, unspoken, but heavy in the air. Both of them knew this peace could not last. The land outside was wide, but the world was closing in, and neither of them yet understood how deeply that single night under one roof would change everything that followed. The days that followed passed slowly, like the sun moving carefully across the sky. The woman's strength returned bit by bit, but she was still far from well. Every morning, the rancher checked her wound before starting his work. He never asked permission, and she never refused. Their routine settled into something quiet and steady, though both of them knew it could break at any moment. She learned the land quickly. Even with pain still lingering in her side, she moved with purpose. She swept the floor, brought water from the well, and fed the animals when the rancher was busy. She did not complain. If something hurt, she hid it. That strength impressed him more than words ever could. The rancher noticed small things about her. She always faced the door when she sat down. She flinched at sudden sounds, especially distant hoofbeats or barking dogs. At night, she sometimes woke suddenly, her breath sharp, her eyes searching the dark. When that happened, she would sit by the fire until sleep returned. He never asked about her dreams, and she never explained them. One evening, as the sky turned deep red, the rancher returned from the fields later than usual. He found her standing near the fence, staring toward the horizon. Her posture was stiff, alert. "You hear something?" he asked. She nodded. "Men passed nearby earlier, not on your land, but close." His jaw tightened. "How many?" "3, maybe 4. Did they see you?" "I don't think so." He trusted her instincts. Out here, survival depended on noticing things before they arrived. That night, he doubled the locks and kept his rifle closer than usual. They ate in silence, the sound of wind pressing against the walls. Later, when darkness settled, the storm clouds returned. Rain fell hard and lightning cut across the sky. The woman's fever rose again and her steps grew unsteady. She tried to hide it, but her body betrayed her. "You need rest," the rancher said firmly. "I'm fine." "You're not." She swayed slightly and he caught her before she fell. She did not pull away this time. He guided her toward the bedroom, laying her down gently. The fire was low and the room was cold. "You should take the bed," she said weakly. "I can manage the floor." "You're not sleeping on the floor," he replied. "Not tonight." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She was too tired, too worn. He placed another blanket over her and turned to leave, but she caught his sleeve. "Don't go far," she said softly. It surprised both of them. He sat on the chair near the bed, watching the storm through the window. The rain blurred the world outside, turning everything distant and unclear. At some point in the night, she began to shiver again. Without thinking, he moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed so the warmth of his body could reach her. She did not wake fully, but she shifted slightly, her breathing calming. There was nothing improper in it. No intention. Just two people sharing warmth against the cold. Morning came quietly. The storm had passed, leaving the land fresh and clean. Sunlight spilled into the room. The rancher woke first, stiff from the chair. He realized how close they were and moved away slowly, careful not to disturb her, but she was already awake. For a moment they looked at each other, neither speaking. There was no fear in her eyes this time, only something thoughtful, unreadable. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You'll be able to travel soon." Her expression changed slightly. "I know." They both understood what that meant. As her strength returned, the space between them filled with unspoken things. They talked more, though still carefully. She told him about her childhood, about growing up close to the land, about learning to read the sky and the wind. She spoke of loss, but not details. He shared stories of his wife, of the quiet happiness they once had. His voice did not break, but his eyes darkened when he spoke. One afternoon, while fixing a broken gate together, she asked him, "Why do you live so far from everyone?" He paused, tightening a nail. "Less noise. That's not the real reason." He considered lying, then didn't. "Because everything I cared about was taken. Out here, nothing can be stolen if it's already empty." She looked at him for a long time. "Empty doesn't mean finished." He didn't answer. That night the air felt heavy. The fire burned low and the wind carried distant sounds, too distant to name but close enough to cause worry. She packed her few belongings quietly, folding them with care. The rancher watched from the doorway. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes. Tonight, before morning," he nodded slowly. "That's probably wise." She hesitated. "They won't stop looking for me. I know. If they find you helped me, I know that too." Silence stretched between them. She stepped closer, her movements careful. "You could turn me in," she said, "claim the reward." "That was never an option." Her eyes softened. "You risked everything for someone you barely know." He met her gaze. "Maybe I needed to." The fire crackled, sending sparks upward. Outside, the night felt vast and uncertain. She moved toward the door, then stopped. "I don't regret staying here," she said quietly. Neither did he. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. The space between them felt smaller than before. She reached out, placing her hand briefly over his heart, not as a promise, not as a claim, but as a memory. "Whatever happens," she said, "remember that night wasn't a mistake." Then she was gone, disappearing into the dark. The rancher stood there long after the door closed. The house felt emptier than before, yet changed. He returned to his routine the next day, but nothing felt the same. He listened more closely to the wind. He watched the horizon longer than necessary. Weeks passed. Then one evening, a letter arrived, delivered by a stranger who asked no questions. The rancher read it once, then again, his hands trembling. It was from her. The words were simple, written with care. She was alive, still running, still hunted. And at the end, one final sentence changed everything he thought he knew. The rancher sat down heavily, the letter pressed to his chest, realizing that one quiet night had tied their lives together in a way neither of them could escape. The letter stayed in the rancher's hands long after the stranger rode away. He read the words again and again, as if reading them enough times might change their meaning. But the message remained the same. The woman was alive. She was still moving from place to place. And she was carrying something that tied her to him forever. For a long time he sat at the small wooden table, staring at the wall. The house felt too quiet, too still. Outside, the wind moved through the grass just like it always had. The world had not changed, but his had. The next few days passed in a strange way. He continued his work, fed the animals, repaired fences, and checked the fields. Anyone watching him would think nothing was wrong, but inside his thoughts never stopped. He replayed every moment he could remember, her voice, the way she watched the land, the quiet strength in her eyes. He wondered where she was now, whether she was safe, whether she was eating enough, whether she was alone. At night, sleep came slowly. When it did, it brought dreams of footsteps outside, of riders appearing at the edge of his land, of her standing in the doorway with news he was not ready to hear. He woke often, reaching for the rifle beside his bed, heart pounding. Then one afternoon he noticed signs that made his chest tighten. Hoofprints near the far fence, fresh ones, too many to belong to travelers passing by. Later that evening, smoke rose from somewhere beyond the hills. Not a campfire meant to last a night, but something more careful, more watchful. They were getting closer. 2 days later, she returned. It was near dusk when he saw her walking toward the ranch, her figure thin against the wide land. For a moment, he thought he was imagining her, but then she lifted her hand slightly, a quiet signal. He moved toward her quickly, guiding her inside before anyone could see. She looked tired, not weak, but worn in a way that came from long roads and constant fear. Her eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd known her, there was no guarded distance. "You came back," he said. "I had to," she replied. She did not sit right away. Instead, she stood near the door listening. Only when she was sure they were alone did she move toward the table. He noticed how carefully she walked, how one hand rested over her stomach without thought. She met his gaze directly. "What I wrote to you, it's true," he nodded. "I know." "I didn't come to trap you," she said quickly, "or to ask for anything you don't choose to give. I never thought that. I needed you to hear it from me," she said, "not just from words on paper." He took a slow breath. "You're in danger coming here." "I'm always in danger," she replied, "but this matters more." They sat down across from each other. The fire burned low, filling the room with a warm glow. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, he asked, "How long have they been after you?" "Since before I met you," she said. "But now they're searching harder. They think I'll slow down. They think they can corner me. And you can't keep running." "No," she said quietly, "not forever." He looked at her stomach again, understanding settling heavily in his chest. "You shouldn't be alone." "I won't be," she said, "not now." That was when they heard it, a horse, close, too close. They both froze. She stood quickly, moving toward the back of the house. "There's a path behind the barn," he whispered. "It leads to the creek." She shook her head. "If I run, they'll follow." Another voice carried through the air, a man calling out, calm but sharp. The rancher stepped outside before she could stop him. 2 riders stood near the fence. Their eyes moved over the land, calculating. "Evening," one of them said. "We're looking for someone." "I haven't seen anyone," the rancher replied evenly. "You sure?" the man asked. "They say she was seen nearby." The rancher held his ground. "People pass through all the time, they don't stay." The riders exchanged a look. One dismounted, taking a few steps closer. "You wouldn't hide a fugitive, would you?" the man asked. The rancher met his gaze. "I don't hide trouble." The moment stretched. Then the man smiled, thin and cold. "We'll be around," he said, "if you remember anything." They rode off slowly, not far enough to feel safe. When the rancher returned inside, she was standing very still. "They're not leaving," she said. "No," she took a breath. "Then it's time I stop running." He stared at her. "That's not an option. It is if the truth comes out." "The truth doesn't matter to people like them." "It does if it's spoken loud enough," she said. She told him everything then, about the land her family once held, about men who wanted it and took it by force, about lies spread to turn the world against her. Her voice never shook, even when her eyes did. "They think I'm alone," she said. "That's why they're bold." "You're not alone," he said firmly. She looked at him. "Are you sure you're ready for what that means?" He didn't hesitate. "I already chose." They spent the night planning, speaking softly, listening for sounds outside. Fear remained, but something stronger had joined it. Resolve. Before dawn, she rested while he kept watch. He noticed how peaceful she looked when she slept, how the worry eased from her face. He placed a blanket over her carefully, a promise made without words. As the sun rose, the land looked the same as it always had, but now it held a secret that could no longer stay hidden. The rancher stepped outside, ready to face whatever came next, not just for himself, but for the future that had already begun. Morning light spread slowly across the ranch, touching the fields and fences like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The rancher stood near the barn, listening to the distant sounds of the land. Birds called softly. Wind brushed the grass. Somewhere far away, riders moved, patient and waiting. Inside the house, the woman sat at the table, hands folded, breathing steady. She looked calmer than she had the night before, not because the danger was gone, but because a decision had been made. Running had kept her alive. Now, standing still might be the only way forward. When the rancher came inside, she looked up. "They'll come back today," she said. "Yes," he replied, "they will. I don't want you hurt because of me." He poured water into a cup and set it in front of her. "You didn't ask for this, and neither did I, but we're here now." She studied his face. "If this goes wrong." "It won't," he said, though he did not fully know if that was true. They spent the early hours preparing, not for a fight but for the truth. The rancher saddled a horse and rode to the nearest town before the sun climbed too high. He spoke to people who knew him well, people who trusted his word. He did not beg, he did not exaggerate, he told them only what he knew and what he believed. Some listened, some looked away. A few nodded quietly. By midday, the riders returned. This time there were more of them. They approached openly without hiding, their confidence clear. They expected fear. They expected silence. The rancher stepped out to meet them, standing tall, hands empty. "You're back," he said. "We are," one of the men replied. "And this time we know she's here. She's under my roof," the rancher said evenly. "You don't step inside without my permission." The man laughed softly. "You don't have the authority to stop us." "I have the right," the rancher replied, "and witnesses." From the road behind him, riders appeared, townspeople, farmers, men and women who had come because they trusted the rancher's name. They did not carry anger. They carried curiosity and concern. The woman stepped out then, slow and steady, her face uncovered. She stood beside the rancher, not behind him. "I'm here," she said clearly, "and I'm done hiding." The leader's expression shifted. "You should have kept running." "I should have kept my land," she replied. "But you took that first." Murmurs spread through the gathered people. Some had heard parts of her story before, rumors passed quietly. Now they heard it fully, spoken without fear. She told them about the forged claims, the threats, the night her home was burned while she was away. She spoke of being blamed for things she did not do so others could profit. She spoke calmly, letting the truth stand on its own. The riders tried to interrupt her, but the rancher raised his hand. "Let her finish." When she did, silence fell. It was not the silence of doubt, but of thinking. One older man stepped forward. "I remember that land," he said slowly. "I remember who worked it, and I remember who wanted it." Others nodded. The leader's voice sharpened. "This isn't a court." "No," the rancher said. "But it's a start." The riders saw the shift then. The way the crowd stood a little closer together. The way the woman did not tremble. The way the rancher did not back down. They left, not defeated, but no longer certain. That night the ranch felt different. Not safe, but steadier. Lamps burned late as people talked quietly, sharing pieces of memory that had been ignored too long. The woman listened, tears filling her eyes but not falling. Later, when the house was quiet again, she sat by the fire. The rancher joined her. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," he replied, "I did." She rested her hand over her stomach. "Whatever happens, this child will know the truth." He nodded. "So will the world." Outside, the stars burned bright, witnesses to a stand that could no longer be undone. The days after the gathering passed with careful quiet. The riders did not return right away, but no one believed the danger had ended. The land felt watchful, as if it were holding its breath. Still, something important had changed. The truth was no longer locked inside one woman's fear. It had been spoken, heard, and remembered. People from nearby towns came in small numbers over the next week. They did not arrive loudly. Some brought food. Some brought papers and old records they had kept without knowing why. Others came only to listen. Each visit added another piece to a story that had been broken on purpose years before. The woman stayed mostly indoors, resting when she could. The long months of running had taken their toll, and now her body demanded care. The rancher made sure she ate well and did not overwork herself. At first, she resisted, unused to being protected, but slowly she allowed it. Not because she felt weak, but because she no longer felt alone. At night, they talked quietly by the fire, sometimes about the future, sometimes about nothing at all. Silence between them had become gentle, no longer sharp. They did not make promises they could not keep. They simply stayed. Word traveled farther than expected. A man from the county office arrived one morning, polite but serious. He listened, took notes, and asked careful questions. He did not accuse. He did not threaten. When he left, he tipped his hat to the woman and said, "We'll be looking into this." It was not justice yet, but it was movement. The riders came back only once more. This time they did not cross the fence. They stayed on the road, watching from a distance. When they saw others nearby, farmers working, neighbors standing close, they turned their horses and left without a word. The woman watched them go, her shoulders slowly relaxing. "I think they know it's over," she said. "People like that don't give up easily," the rancher replied. "But they back away when the light gets too bright." Winter came early that year. Cold settled into the land, sharp and clean. Snow dusted the fields and the nights grew longer. The woman's steps became slower, more careful. The rancher stayed close, always watching, always ready. One cold night, pain came suddenly and fiercely. The rancher did not panic. He followed the instructions given by a kind woman from town who had visited weeks earlier. He kept the fire strong, spoke calmly, and stayed present through every long hour. When the child finally cried, the sound filled the small house like a promise. The woman wept, not from pain, but from relief so deep it shook her. The rancher held the child carefully, his hands trembling more than he expected. The baby was small, warm, and alive, proof that something good could grow even in harsh soil. In the weeks that followed, the world outside continued to shift. Official papers arrived. Old claims were questioned. Names that had once carried power were spoken with doubt instead of certainty. It was not a fast process, but it was steady. The woman healed slowly. Each day she grew stronger. She spent mornings near the window, holding the child and watching the land. "This place saved us," she said once. The rancher shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just didn't get in the way." Spring returned with green shoots pushing through frozen ground. The land renewed itself as it always did. One afternoon, the woman walked the fields with the rancher, the child wrapped close to her chest. "I used to think survival meant running," she said. "Now I think it means staying." He looked at her. "Staying is harder." "Yes," she agreed, "but it's worth it." When the final decision came, it was delivered quietly. The false charges were cleared. The stolen land was acknowledged for what it was. Apologies were not spoken aloud, but the truth stood firm enough without them. The woman did not return to her old land. She chose instead to build something new, together. The ranch was no longer just a place of silence. It became a place of life, of shared work, of laughter that surprised them both when it appeared. The child grew strong, watched over by open sky and honest labor. Sometimes, the rancher would look out across the fields at sunset and think about how close he had come to turning away that first night. How easy it would have been to choose safety over kindness. He was grateful he had not. The woman never forgot the road she had walked, but she no longer carried it like a wound. It had become part of her strength. When she spoke of the past, it was not with bitterness but clarity. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some would add drama, some would soften the truth, but at its heart it remained simple. Two lives crossed when they were both broken. One chose to help, one chose to stand. And together they chose a future built not on fear, but on truth, courage, and the quiet power of staying.